Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this Slow Art Friday today. My name is Paige Taylor. I am the Learning and Engagement Assistant here at the Asheville Art Museum. And I'm here today with Megan Pyle, our docent, who will be leading us on our discussion. As many of you know, each Friday at 12 p.m. In our Slow Art Friday program, docents lead virtual interactive conversations about a few artworks in our collection or special exhibitions. The goal is simple: slow down, discover the joy of looking at art, and talk about the experience with others. For today's program, Megan will lead us on an interactive conversation about 3 artworks in our collection. We'll spend about 15 minutes or so with each artwork, and Megan will allow us some time to look at each work on our own, slowly, before leading a conversation about each one with questions. As participants, we encourage you to engage in dialogue with Megan and myself and each other throughout the hour. So just a reminder, as we participate with Zoom, that we, by default, mute the microphones and turn the videos off. As you participate, please remember to choose a quiet room and turn off your cell phones or silence other devices. Try not to sit in front of a bright window or bright light source so that we can see you better. We recommend that you use headphones and a microphone so that you can hear each other better. And use a desktop, laptop, or tablet for the best viewing experience. Make sure that your screen name includes your first name and your last name or your last initial. If you'd like to make questions or comments, ask questions or make comments, please unmute your microphone and ask your questions or make your comments when we ask. You can also type your questions into the chat box, or you can use the participant sidebar and click the icon to raise your hand and we can call on you. Just a reminder, we are recording, so if you prefer not to be recorded, you can turn your video off or mute your microphone and ask your questions and make your comments in the chat box. Are there any questions before we begin? Okay. Well, Megan, what are we going to be talking about today?
Oh, well, thank you, Paige. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Megan, and I'm pleased to be a touring docent and part of the Asheville Art Museum family. I'm so happy to be with y'all this afternoon to share a conversation about these artworks. In honor of unity, I've chosen 3 artworks that focus on finding stories in faces and expressions. Hank Williams is quoted as saying, "Folk songs express the dreams and prayers and hopes of the working people." Each artwork is a unique representation of a different identity, which we as the viewer may or may not find common ground. I'm excited to be discussing these artworks with y'all, and I will facilitate the conversations for these artworks, so please feel free to chime in the chat box anytime. We'll discuss each artwork for about 15 minutes, and sometimes we have to cut the conversation short so that we can spend time with each piece of artwork. Okay, so let's go. So the first artwork, let's just please take a few moments to look at this artwork from top to bottom, side to side and corner to corner. We'll take about 10 seconds.
No, let's see, I typed into text.
Okay, so where is your eye drawn first in this artwork? Who would like to be the first to chime in?
Well, my eye went to the text, which I cannot read because it's so small.
Yes, well, and I, yeah, it's difficult to read the text, but what else can we find?
The first thing I saw was the smile. This is Dick Bromond. I'm looking over Virginia Pet's shoulder.
Okay, the smile. So, so what makes you say that? There's a lot going on in this artwork.
Yeah, there certainly is. That was the first thing I saw. It is so striking and joyful. Then, of course, I looked around and saw the hat and the shirt and the text, which I can't read either.
Would you like me to try to read it to you?
Yes.
I might have a better view. Let's see on my larger screen. It says, Hank Williams, The Peaceful Sound in Music by Howard Finster. From God, Man of Visions. 5,000, there's some numbers I can't quite make out. A number of works from June 26, 1990, 10:40 p.m. Take time to think on heaven. It is the best thing that could happen to you. Talk to Jesus and get ready. Go to heaven, have that holy feeling that you expected, hell and pain.
Thank you.
It's not expected, it's escaped.
Escaped? Okay, you can read that better than me. Thank you.
So what else can we find?
Is this a drawing of Hank Williams? Does it resemble what he looked like?
Well, I would say yes. I mean, it's an interpretation, yes, of Hank Williams. Yes, it's acrylic and markers on plywood. Yeah. So
there are trees. I think there are trees. Maybe they are mountains on his shirt. And I just noticed that it looks like there are faces on those trees or mountains with, yes, eyes and nose and mouth.
Christmas.
Trees and houses.
yes.
And in the background, there are women. It looks like a woman holding hands up towards the trees with red fruit, apples or something made in red. At first, I thought those looked like cacti, but then I realized when you get closer, you can see they have little face dots and long hair. So I'm deducing that they're women.
Yes. So we all see a lot going on in this. How would you describe this artwork to someone who could not see?
It's colorful. It's representational. I mean, if it's Howard Finster, he was considered an outsider artist, so he was not formally trained. It was very expressive, and I think it's multi-layered because there's so many different things that you can look at and make interpretations from.
So could you tell us more about the different interpretations? What
I don't really know that much about Hank Williams per se. And actually, I don't know that much about Howard Finster either. I know that he was very religious, and a lot of his works related to the concept of God, meeting God, having a relationship with Jesus. The mountains, the faces in the mountains look scary to me. And so that seems like it almost could be something coming up in smoke, coming out of hell, relating to the text where he talks about, you know, being grateful that you escaped hell and pain. And then that the building, I think, could be a church.
Yes, I agree.
And I'm not really sure about the person, whether that's something reflective of Hank Williams or whether that's Howard's just making a decorative shirt for the character. I don't know what that is, although her hands are up, so it could be in supplication, or it could be just as simple as Eve picking the apple from the tree related to the whole religious theme.
Yes.
Those that come to mind.
Yeah. So what story do you think the artist is trying to convey?
The very lowest figure at the bottom of the shirt, just above where the text begins. It looks to me like the hands are raised, and I'm interpreting it as praise in front of what I think is the church building.
Are you talking about the person in red that I'm
Yes.
circling here? Okay.
Yes. And that's the feeling in the text about preparing for heaven and escaping hell, maybe the idea of praise.
Okay.
It's interesting also because the face, the expressions on Hank Williams' face is so benign to me and almost could be perceived as beneficent, that he is representing Hank Williams. I mean, I don't know that he would do this specifically, but you know, as all-seeing or overseeing what was going on below him in some way, like God does.
The first line too, Hank Williams, the peaceful sound of music,
Mm-hmm.
and the way he looks, you know, I think sort of sets the theme of what comes next after that. But I don't know if he was listening to the music or just a fan, but he seems to think that that sound of music that he makes brings about thinking about heaven,
Mm-hmm.
hell.
So so the story that the artist is trying to convey, is it that Hank Williams is looking down from heaven, or that his music is heavenly, or just trying to, why don't you elaborate, please? Just continue from.
I don't know. When did he die? Does anybody know?
He died in the mid 50s.
Oh, okay.
Ooh, that's a long time ago. Okay.
Yes, he died fairly young, young man, and he had scoliosis from childhood, amongst other health issues, and had sort of struggled with addictions, alcohol and opiates that may have been related to some of his health issues.
Megan,
but-
is this, usually he uses a flat piece of plywood. Is this a wall piece or a standing piece? I have a seated piece of his.
Well, it was done on plywood. And so it's 13 by 8 inches. So I would think that it would be a hanging piece, but I've never seen it on view in the museum.
I was going to ask, is it on exhibit now?
It's not on exhibit now.
Okay.
No. So what kind of mood or thought or emotion does this inspire in you?
Contemplation.
Yeah.
Yes, and does anyone else would like to chime in?
Looks like peacefulness to me, that
Mm-hmm.
that the figures and the face are peaceful looking, and of course the text is about that too. So
It seems calm and thoughtful.
Those are not so. And is that what you all think the artist? Is that how you think the artist wanted you to feel when viewing this work?
Mm.
I don't know what the artist wanted.
yeah.
I'm recalling an earlier comment about what's the first thing that you see? Where is your eye drawn first? And the comment was a smile. Just wondering if anyone thinks that the artist wanted the viewer to feel joyful, given the perhaps the joy that the artist gave the fans, during his lifetime and even now.
Well, the text says, heaven is the best thing that could happen to you. So it does sound joyous.
Oh. So I'll just ask a final question. Would you display this artwork in your home? And if yes, why and in which room?
If I could make decisions on my own, I would.
Yes, I would definitely display it in my home. I think because I like the feeling that it gives me, and I like the colors a lot. I don't know. I have a parlor. I have a living room. It would be great in either of those. I think it would also be a nice piece to have in a bedroom because it does feel calming to me.
Anyone else like to please chime in?
I would hang it in my house because I like the expression, like you were mentioning, the pleasant expression, and the colors and the message. I'd probably put it in a room where I hang out a lot, so probably the dining room or living room.
Well, thank you. And so now, would you please show us the label information page? And as we've already discussed, this is a portrait of Hank Williams by the artist Howard Finster. It was done in 1990, and it's acrylic and markers on plywood, and it's 13 3/4 by 8 inches. And Howard Finster, as we've already discussed, was an outsider artist, and he was born in 1916 and died in 2001. He was a native of Alabama and spent the better part of his life as a preacher. And in 1976, he received a vision from God instructing him to begin painting sacred art. And just shy of 47,000 paintings later, his vision has placed his work in the Smithsonian American Art Museum, Library of Congress, Asheville Art Museum, and other major museums around the world. His paintings are colorful and detailed, and they use a flat picture plane without perspective and are often covered with words, especially Bible verses. Okay, well now if we could please move on to the second artwork page, please. Thank you. So we'll do the same. We'll please take a few moments to look at this artwork, top to bottom, side to side, corner to corner, and we'll spend about 10 seconds doing so. Okay, so where is your eye drawn first in this artwork?
White face with the vote. A white face on a black face. A vote.
And the word vote
Yes.
really stands out.
So
Finally.
the contrast of the colors and the writing are the first things that stand out. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, I'm wondering, I can understand why there's a white background to the word vote, so the text would stand out. But I'm not sure why the rest of the face is in white also. And I'm wondering if this is a reference to maybe some kind of tribal or customary or cultural face decoration. And that's why the rest of the face is in white.
I also noticed that the two cars are white, and there's a lot of whiteness in the sky and the road or whatever that is right behind him. Even the grass looks light.
Mm-hmm.
Now there are two trees in the background, but so much of the background is also white.
Yes, and what more can we find?
The intensity of his eyes, I think the white does like accentuate his eyes and his straight on gaze to the viewer. It's appealing to the viewer. I don't know what it means. It's very intense, but each person would read something different, I think, and what emotion it's suggesting.
It suggests to me that there's a political statement happening also, maybe just because of the times we are in currently, but the cars look like they are from the maybe 60s. He's in a rural environment and he's wearing overalls, and he's a black man who is promoting voting in whiteface. So there's something about the impact of the whiteface related to white people using blackface. And the connection between the white face and I'm going to vote and I want you to vote, you know, regardless of the fact that we're not white. So it feels in some way political, like a political statement. Plus it's obviously, it's a portrait, it's straight on, he's looking directly into the camera. So it's it feels very intentional in that way to me.
So from some of the comments, there's a kind of a sense of, I gather there's a sense of the artist drawing the viewer's eyes in, and the viewer's eyes are sort of looking all around at the background and the color and and then sort of focusing in on the face with the words vote written on the face. What mood or thought or emotion does this artwork inspire in you?
Someone said intense, and I think it is.
Challenging.
There's
Maybe the white is, you know, saying white people can vote. You know, if I were white, I would vote. He's
I
still in
see.
a mask to be white. And I think this was about the time for the Voting Act that was passed.
I see both strength and resignation in his face.
Mhm.
It also feels hopeful to me because what I'm reading is that he is going to vote. He's got his jacket under his right arm. So he's either out promoting votes among Black people or he's going to vote himself, or both is the story that I'm projecting.
And
Megan,
yes,
you know, you're picking these two to start with. That it's sort of the same. The figure, you know, it's about the same, you know, composition and the intensity of the face and everything. But also, you know, also that there are words within the picture that engage the viewer. It's
yes.
It's not just visual, but it is words also.
So you've touched on what these artworks have in common, and how are they different?
This is a photograph of a real person. The other one's a painting, also of a person who was a real person, but it's not photography. There's more, you know, imaginary overlay, more text in the previous one than in this one.
More political than religious of the other one.
Yeah.
And what about kind of the mood or emotion of the two? We noticed this smile with the first artwork, and now the sort of but there's a hopeful was a comment that we heard. But what about sort of similarities or differences in the mood and emotion of the two artworks?
You know, I feel like they both are serious in some way. I think that Howard was making a serious point with the text and the artwork in the first painting, even though the subject had a soft smile on his face. It struck me that he was making a serious point about getting with Jesus and going to heaven. And this feels like it's making a serious point as well.
They seem to both have clear messages, or it's clear that there is a message that the artist wants to convey.
This face looks much more serious to me than the preceding.
And how do you think this would be, how would you think differently about this photograph if it were in color?
I don't think it would be nearly as striking if it were in color.
Yeah, the contrast of the black and white, I think, is very powerful in this photograph.
I know sometimes it can be kind of a trope to call black and white photography timeless, but I think maybe in this case it could apply that it's, you know, regardless of the time setting that we see this photograph made, and now it's always an important responsibility and privilege and right to vote.
I'm intrigued by the vertical lines on his shirt and the horizontal lines of the street and the grass and the pavement behind him. So in my mind, the horizontal line, the cars, is the continuum of time. And his horizontal lines on his shirt seems to be a place in time.
That's cool.
Very poetic.
Yeah.
So do you think this artwork belongs in a museum?
Yes.
I think it's in the Asheville Art Museum.
Yes, it's on view. It is, yes.
The
Yes.
permanent.
Well, it's in the
Or
collection
is it
hall.
part of a? Is it a part of a show or special?
Well, it's in the collection hall, and the artworks are rotated. It's in particular, you know, artwork on paper can only be on view for a limited time before it has to be sort of put away in a vault, you know, in a dark environment, just to preserve the artwork. But it is on view now.
And it is
And is that
part of
intentional?
the permanent collection.
And was it put up for this particular time, you know, of election year?
I believe it's been on view since the museum opened last November.
I believe that's correct, or at least since the beginning of the year.
So, and then would you display this artwork in your home?
Yes. I'm not sure where. Maybe in the living room. I like it.
I think it would be nice to display in my house just as a reminder to myself that it's important to stay active and to remember what can I do to, you know, make a difference in the world.
So does this artwork kind of evoke strong emotions in the viewer, in you all?
Yes, particularly right now.
So can you all sort of find some unity and common ground with the figure in this artwork?
Well, definitely, because what's happening right now is that some people who did vote, that's being contested in court. So I think this is very apt for this week.
How do you all see a connection with the Hank Williams quote, folk songs express the dreams and prayers and hopes of the working people. Do you all see a connection with this figure, this in the photograph and that quote? Do you think his hopes and dreams and prayers are represented in this photograph?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big part of what this photograph is about, is his hopes and dreams. And my guess is that the Hank Williams song, you know, it was pre when this photograph was made. But so I don't know that this person in this photograph would have been familiar with that particular song, though.
Yes. Well, so are there any sort of final comments, or does anyone have anything else they'd like to add to the conversation before we show the label information? Okay, well, Paige, would you please show the label information? This is, it's untitled, but it's from the Time of Change series by Bruce Davidson, who's the photographer, 1965. It's a gelatin silver print, 14 by 11 inches. Bruce Davidson, who was born in 1933, is an American photographer. He's been a member of the Magnum Photo Agency since 1958. His photographs, notably those taken in Harlem, New York City, have been widely exhibited and published, and he's known for photographing communities usually hostile to outsiders. And a quote from him is, "If I am looking for a story at all, it is in my relationship to the subject, the story that tells me rather than I tell." Through the agency in 1961, he received his first assignment to photograph high fashion for Vogue, and then was assigned by the New York Times to cover the Freedom Riders in the South. The Freedom Riders assignment in the South led Davidson to undertake a documentary project on the civil rights movement. From 1961 to 1965, he chronicled its events and effects around the country. And President Johnson assembled the White House photography program, in which Davidson's project was used to humanize the poor and demonstrate the urgency of government action. It's an interesting part of our history. So Paige, would you please move on to the third artwork? Okay, and we'll do the same that we've done for the others. We'll take a few moments to look at this artwork top to bottom, side to side, corner to corner, for about 10 seconds. So what's going on in this artwork?
Well, it's hard to tell. I mean, the face is out of focus, possibly because, or the whole thing is out of focus, but I don't know if that's done after the fact or when the photo was taken, the person was moving. And the mouth is open. So again, you don't know whether there's sound coming out or whether they're just holding their mouth open.
So you're seeing a figure,
Yeah.
a head with
Yeah.
a mouth,
Yeah, agree with
Uh-huh.
me.
Eyes, hair, beard.
so you see a figure, and we're not clear as to whether it's male or female or old or young. We just
Definitely male, right? Because it has a beard, right?
well.
It could exposure, a female and male,
So
but the hair's too much. So.
Like an overlay, you mean?
Yes, you know, like a woman, and then you go back and shoot on top of that for double exposure.
Yeah.
So where is your eye drawn first in this artwork?
Or that area.
Well, I think to the face. That was the first thing I noticed was here is a face and it's blurred. And then the second thing I noticed was that the person doesn't have clothes on his or her torso. So I'm wondering if it's a nude. And then at first I thought, okay, it's a takeoff on, we blur the part we're not supposed to see, some sexual connotation, and that's blurred. But really the whole photo is blurred. So it's not that exactly.
So what mood or thought or emotion does this artwork inspire in you?
It's a little scary to me. The eyes in particular. I mean, the fact that the place where there would be eyes seems like they're cut out because there's the white ring around them. I find that very off-putting. And it was sort of the first thing that after I looked at the photograph as a whole, that was the thing that I was most drawn to. It's like, why are the eyes cut out in that way? And there's an emptiness there.
So what more can we find? What would anyone else like to chime in?
One of the first things I saw were the two noses, and at first I thought it's just the same person in motion, being caught in motion. But then when somebody started saying, is it male or female? Then I started saying, well, it could be two different people. But I think it's more about why it's blurred is that, this time lapse or whatever, just a little bit out of focus.
So what is the mood, or how does it, or what do you think the mood is?
I agree with what I think Barbara mentioned, where it feels a little creepy because the eyes are blackened. And because we see this blurred motion, it almost feels like a ghostly creature.
I saw that too, yeah, ghostly.
With the black eyes. So it feels a little creepy to me.
So how do you think the artist, what do you think the artist's intention is for the viewer in terms of the mood or the thought or the emotion?
Age, but it's also unsettling. I think he wanted to unsettle us a little bit, or she.
It also makes me feel curious, actually, wanting to know more about it because it's not very straightforward or like anything that I might be familiar with.
You wonder if this was like a police photograph.
Uh-huh.
This figure standing up against a wall.
Like a mugshot?
Yeah, that occurred to me. Or in a in a torture situation because there's no shirt. And maybe that's why his mouth is open, he's screaming.
Also, it's hard to tell, but my first impression was that this was a person of color also.
Oh, and I thought it was lighter skinned because of the shoulders, but
Yeah, interesting.
so I think that was the point, is to get us engaged, to
Yeah.
project into it what we
Uh-huh.
these.
Well, how would you describe this artwork to someone who cannot see?
Well, I'd say it's an out of focus portrait of the head and shoulders of a person with very dark hair and a very dark beard and sort of black spaces where the eye holes would be.
I'm still struggling with the artist's intent.
It's disquieting.
Disturbing.
I think I'd probably describe the motion too, because that really stands out to me from what we might see as a more traditional portrait of a head and shoulders and neutral background.
So what does this artwork have in common with the previous two artworks that we looked at?
Torso and heads.
Yeah, portraiture.
Portraiture and the shape of the figure. And in terms of the meaning from the first two artworks, which were sort of peaceful, calm, thoughtful, intensity, strength, serious. Do you think that those are common? Those are in common or different from the third artwork?
Well, I think this one is very different. It makes us feel different. I don't know if he's shouting, in which case he's trying to say something to us, or if he's screaming because something is being done to him. But it's certainly a different feeling from the other two.
It shares the quality of intensity, though, of the other two.
They're all looking at the viewer.
That's true.
And what about the lines? We noticed lines in the last artwork. Does anyone see lines in this artwork?
Well, I see a line down what would be the left side of the head, and the line of the shoulders in shadow, it looks like. And then the line on the left-hand side where it becomes white space. I don't know if that's just how we're seeing it, like all the way to the left. That line, yeah. So whether that's the way the print of the photo is, or whether that's the photo hanging on the wall. I don't know I'm not sure what that is.
This line that I think you were describing is just the end of the photograph and how it looks on the PowerPoint slide.
Okay,
So the really bright stuff is just not part of the photo.
got it.
So what about the artist's use of space? and contrast of the tones, the sort of black and white and gray tones.
Well, it's very balanced spatially, I think. If you
Symmetrical.
eliminate that white part, the head and shoulders are right in the middle, both vertically and horizontally to me.
So
Jennifer,
how,
did you say symmetrical? Was that you?
I did.
so the symmetrical balance, so how does that alter your opinions as far as the artist's intent with this photograph? I mean, do you all think that the artist intended for it to be creepy, or as some of the comments have been, scary, off-putting, an emptiness? Do you think that was the artist's intent, given how balanced the photograph is? Is this all intentional?
My eyes keep wanting to bring it into focus to make it clear, and so, which is making me a little seasick. Motion sickness. But I think his intent is to be obscure, you know, and to not give us the reality, to keep us guessing, keep us engaged. How did he do that, or what's going on?
So, do you think this artwork belongs in a museum?
Yes.
And what do you see that makes you say that? Or can you tell me more about that?
Well, it does make you feel. And that's what I think art is supposed to do. It's not always clear what the artist had in mind.
Engaging.
And also technique-wise, I mean, I'm really curious about the technique that was used to create this piece. And it seems as though that's something that makes it, I guess, museum-worthy.
I agree. I was going to comment on your mentioning of being curious, and agree with Virginia that I think that's that's a good thing that art can do.
Anybody
You
else
wanna-
have trouble keeping their eyes on it without getting a little woozy?
I think I am squinting a little bit more at this one.
Oh, that's interesting. I just did that, and it brings a whole nother image into view.
Well, this is on view at the museum, and it's interesting if you all have an opportunity to go to the museum, if you sit on the floor and sort of look up at it, or you stand in front of it, kind of looking, you know, eye to eye with the figure, or you stand to the left or you stand to the right. It is really engaging when you see it on view in the museum. And how would this be different if it were in color? If it were in color, or if it were a color photograph, or even if the artist maybe had sort of hand colored, you know, just added a little bit of color. You know, do you think that would make it less scary and creepy and off-putting? Or does anyone have a comment about how color might change this photograph?
I think color would take away from the impact. The color might make it seem more ordinary. And I think that this is supposed to be more symbolic.
Okay, good.
I think the color might make it feel more human and less ghostly. But by being in black and white, the figure is a little more anonymous. So we can't determine gender or, very much. The color would bring us more context clues, but I kind of like the, how it's anonymous, and we have to, be a little more curious and question it a little bit more.
Thank you. Is there anything else anyone else would like to add before we show the label information?
The light spot in his beard is about where his chin would be if his mouth were closed.
Yes. So that's abnormal with a beard. Most beards don't have a kind of a white circular bare spot on their chin. Yes.
But in
So-
some ways, I can see him barefaced with his mouth closed if that light spot is his chin.
So this is just a fascinating artwork because you could look at this, for 30 minutes and then come back the next day and look at it for 30 minutes again, and you just keep finding more and more details. So it's very interesting. Well, we'll have to stop here. We'll have to stop our discussion so we have time to look at the label information. This is a self-portrait by a female photographer, and it's entitled Horizontal Elliptical Motion. The artist is Blythe Bonen, and this was taken in 1964. It's a gelatin silver print on paper. It's 15 by 18 and 7/8 inches, and it is on view in the museum in the special exhibit, the Barbara Morgan Dancing Atoms and the Andy Warhol Silver Clouds. So Blythe Bonen is from Evanston, Illinois. She was born in 1940, and she's known for her minimalistic graphite drawings and photographs that capture the essence of motion. The drawings and photographs are concerned with gestures and movements that are limited to certain angles, favoring reduction over complexity. Quote from the artist, I'm interested in the forms that result from the kinesthetic reaction to a given situation. Similar motions in different media are translated into a variety of forms. A single line, a system of points, or a grid define a repeated set of limits that narrows the possibilities for motion so it can be studied. The structure of the form reflects the motions possible for humans, the straight push-pull of the hinge joint and the curves from pivots around a fixed point or in motion. I am interested in being deliberate about this last outpost of human sensibility. So her work is generally conceptual in nature, often in the form of self-portraits that capture the motions of her body. So just in closing, thank you all so much. What great conversations we shared today. Thank you so much for participating. Your comments were insightful and sparked meaningful conversation. So glad you joined me. And as always, I look forward to seeing you at the museum. Thank you. And thank you, Paige.
Thank you, Megan. And thank you all for participating with us this afternoon. Just a reminder, we do have our next scheduled Slow Art Friday for next Friday, November the 13th, and it will focus on works on paper. Any comments before we end today?
Nice talking with everybody.
Thank you, Barbara, you too. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Virginia, Linda, Deborah. See you later. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Megan.
You're welcome.